another year of San Diego Comic-Con prep. We are here to kick off our whole season of videos, podcasts, all sorts of tips stuff coming at you to hopefully help out a little bit, preparing those that are new to San Diego Comic-Con to prepare for it. And I know we hear a lot of veterans that like just some reminders, or maybe they glean something from us. Definitely, we do not claim to be experts in all things, but we do have a lot of experience with Comic-Con and like to share anything we can to help people out. So that being said, we are back here setting the gas lamp. Behind us is the San Diego Convention Center. We're going to talk a little bit about the show as a whole in this video, as it's specific to the Convention Center and what CCI brings to it. In separate videos, we'll talk more specifically about exclusives and swag and food in the area. There's some new videos we're going to do this year. We hope that you'll enjoy those, and so those will be coming later. But as we talk about the con, one thing we really want to stress this year, and I think it's something we've always talked about, but it just feels more necessary than ever with some of the changes, particularly with the lotteries for signings and exclusives and things like that. But really stressing the idea that so much of the con is really about perseverance and teamwork, networking, whatever we want to call it. So that'll be kind of a theme, I think, throughout all of our videos and podcasts this year, because we found, last year we had a ton of success with things, and so much of it was because either we really stuck with things and we kept at it, we kept asking questions, we kept going back to things, or people helped us out, and we kept at that, trying to talk to people, letting them know what we were trying to accomplish, and hopefully they would help us out with either with guidance or actually, trading items or things like that. So as we're talking about the convention center and all of that, we're going to really look at things from this perspective of starting out the morning or starting out the afternoon if we're talking about preview night, and kind of lining up. So behind us here we do have Hall A. That is access for our ADA guests, attendees there. But besides that, everyone else, whether we're targeting everything else or Hall H, are going to be down in that Hall H area. So we'll head down there. We'll talk a little bit about the lineup and kind of working our way through the day. So let's head on over. All right, so we've made our way over here to where the tents will be. We would be under the tents now near Hall H here, right next to the convention center. So one thing real quick before we get into kind of the bulk of just the day and making your way into the actual building for the con, do remember that the shuttle hours have changed a little bit this year, so make sure, again, check the days and times and where you're staying if you are using the shuttle. We do not use the shuttle. We always park downtown, so it's not something that really is on our radar a lot of times, and in fact we usually don't mention it in these videos, but it is an important thing obviously for a lot of people that attend the con, so do keep an eye on that. Now, as you're approaching the day of Comic-Con and you've done your planning ahead of time, it's always important to remember everything at Comic-Con is about opportunity costs. It's just too many amazing things going on all at once to even do a fraction of them, so you kind of have to accept that going into it, and I find that really awesome actually, because you just know, like, even if plan A, B, C, and D fail, whatever E and F are will be still really awesome, because there's just so many cool things. That said, let's kind of break down generally making our way in and talk about Hall H first. So in the morning, there are two big massive lines out here, one for Hall H, one for everything else. And I should say massive, all things considered, depending on what's going on in the actual panel rooms, So, I mean, the panel rooms, if Ballroom 20 is hitting, that doesn't have as much of an effect as something like Hall H, because Hall H is its own separate line, and those 6,000 and some people making their way in there is its own designation. Whereas everything else is everything else. And we get that question sometimes of what is in the everything else line. It is truly everything else. So you've got your Ballroom 20, you've got all your other panel rooms as well, you've got the floor, you've got people making their way to signings, etc. So don't get too down if you find that when you show up to the con, the everything else line is way down there. And as we talk about even that Hall H line, same thing, is there's a lot of accessibility there. These are big spaces that fit a lot of people in there. So though that being said, Hall H, as you're in this line, if you got your wristband ahead of time, make sure you're really clear on all the wristband policies, the times, the number of people, where to be check-in. In addition to following that all online, as it's all clarified perfectly by Comic-Con International, make sure also though to just be checking with people. It's always good to check, double check, triple check with volunteer staff members. Make sure you're in the right place so you don't find yourself in the everything else line when you should be in the Hall H line. That said, you'll be waiting here. Ultimately, they are going to march you in through the tents and into the building right there into Hall H, and it's a very short walk once you start moving on in there. Do make sure to understand that there's very few food options in there, so make sure to pack that bag full of all sorts of snacks. The San Diego Convention Center is one of the few convention centers we've seen in this new era that isn't hassling people about food and water and things like that, which is awesome, particularly in Hall H where you really need it, because there's not a whole lot going on in there in terms of options, or at least there hasn't been in the last few years there. Remember that how busy Hall H is will greatly be determined by what's in the room and the total day. So we know Marvel is coming to Comic-Con, the day that they're in there, the time that they're in there. If they're in there at 9 p.m., not that that's going to happen, but I'm just saying, if they were in there at 9 p.m. on a Saturday, it would be packed the whole day through because everybody's going to be waiting for that. So you always kind of have to look at the end of the day of the panel to see what's in there to know how busy it's going to be. Now, in terms of the other panel rooms, same policies there. Ballroom 20, room 6A, whatever, all of them, those things that are going to be later in the day. SDCC blog does a great job with a panel breakdown. They talk everything from preview night all the way through Sunday and give you their takes on what kind of the room turnover will be. So definitely watch for that podcast once the schedule drops. The schedule drops for Comic-Con 2 weeks before the days of the show, and then they always are doing the podcast that weekend, so you can follow along and hear some of their advice. And in the end, make sure to monitor social media with all of these things to see how busy are the rooms, is there going to be opportunities to jump in there, and so on. So now let's talk a little bit about the floor, and that everything else line is part of that. So as we are lining up and making our way in, whether we are wanting to do Ballroom 20, one of the other panel rooms upstairs, or we want to make our way to the floor, they're going to ultimately usher us in through here, and we're going to enter around that Hall E area, and we're going to go up the escalators. And once we go up the escalators, we'll kind of come around a corner and have a choice of two ways. We can either go right into the sales pavilion and line up in there, or do whatever we need to do in there. Mostly though, it's going to be lining up for the exhibit hall there. Or we go left to bend around to what ultimately is above Hall H over here, and then we'll be coming back down through an escalator on that side. The other option in between those two, kind of splintering off, is the Ballroom 20 line right here. If you get confused at all, this is your first time at the con, very simply just ask people as you go. Don't worry, don't stress it, just ask people as you go, and it'll be fine. And again, you may always want to ask 2 or 3 people. Now, as you're bending your way, you want to look, and we're going to do a separate video just about the floor and talk a little bit about accessing the floor and which side you're going to want to go to. Do you make the left or do you make the right? So we'll cover that in a different video later, but once the map hits and you're aware, I would really go onto the website there at comiccon.org, check out what you're interested in most at open if you're hitting the floor, and identify that, and then start to think about, well, am I going to want to use the escalator more on the H side, or am I going to want to use the one over more by Hall C? And that will kind of clear up a lot of that. Remember that they are going to start opening the floor early, around 9 o'clock. Comic-Con International does an amazing job with getting people to places at the con. I say that every year. It's really staggering. As many cons and theme park things as we go to see how they move thousands of people around is amazing. And so they do try to open things up around 9, get people on the floor. The people on the lower floor will start making their way in at 9:30. So if you come and you see everybody kind of lining up at the front there, and you're like, well, should I go all the way upstairs? I'll just wait here. Just remember, they're not going to open those bottom floor doors until 9:30, whereas upstairs, people are starting to make their way into the floor around 9 a.m. there. In the end, make sure to ask questions, make sure to be monitoring social media, make sure you have a portable charger so you can keep your phone charged, so you can monitor social media and don't run out of communication, because at the end of the day, so much of San Diego Comic-Con, whether you're in the panel room, you're out doing the off-sites, or you're on the floor, is about that communication and being able to hear from the millions, what feels like, I should say, millions of voices there. I know that's what I feel like when I look at our notifications. I mean, it's only thousands, but it feels like millions of people are tweeting in and like, hey, this is going on at this booth. Hey, there's room in this panel. Hey, there's this off-site that has this weight. Use that, and you'll be able to find your way to a lot of really interesting and fun things, and it just makes the whole experience more pleasurable. All right, we've moved over here behind sales to kind of hit on a few things. So first up, just to kind of re-emphasize things about the importance of, paying attention to social media and the whole perseverance and networking and all that. But on, I guess it was Saturday of last year, wanting to get into the WB panel for Hall H, we really were keeping an eye and monitoring social media and seeing what was going on with the wristbands. And we found, as we were on our drive-in in the morning on that day, that they never gave out all the wristbands. And so we kind of had a calculated risk then of like, okay, are we going to take the time? And we thought, okay, well, let's just check out how long the line is. And the line, no kidding, it stretched all the way from H, all the way around here, all the way down, far, far behind where we're shooting right now, really totally to the very tip of the bay. The Hilton Bayfront looked so far away from where we were. But in kind of monitoring against social media, where were people with the wristbands cutting off, trying to do a little bit of math there from what people were saying, We took the calculated risk. It was a long migration, but ultimately we were able to get in, and we had a pretty good idea as we were about hitting this area of how full, because we were following, again, social media, what people were sharing. It's like, I think we're going to get in, and it was awesome. We got in, we did the panel, we got to see the cool stuff we wanted to see there. So again, can't stress enough monitoring, and particularly Twitter. All of the other social media platforms are fine for different things, but when it comes to San Diego Comic-Con, nothing really comes close to Twitter in terms of the amount of information, how fast it travels there. Now also with sales, we just want to point out, if you are picking up a badge, a child's badge, international, things like that, check out in sales. Obviously follow everything on comiccon.org to see if there's anything that they have there to share, of what the times are for pickup, the days, all of the details, of course, all of that. Also, we wanted to point out, because we used to talk about at this point in the video about the lines, the Lego drawing, and we would talk about, where the Hasbro tickets were picked up and all of those types of things, and so much has changed with the lottery. So a couple things I wanted to stress with that is, one thing with the lottery system, the whole idea is to get people out of some of these huge lines, and obviously as part of that, all those people have to go somewhere else. So make sure to plan accordingly, especially if you took last year off from the event and you're coming back now, is know that all those people that were in line for Hasbro, they're going somewhere else. So I think we saw, like at Funimation, for example, they had lots of issues at the booth of everybody, and they also had a really cool Funko Pop there, but they also had these people that may have been in line for that. Everybody has to go somewhere, and a lot of Comic-Con attendees are collectors, and they're not going to necessarily just gravitate over to a panel, although even that could clog up some panels. So remember that whatever lines are kind of going away, it comes with the price that they're going to go somewhere else, and some things may alter or change as a result of that. Now with the lotteries and just with signings and with exclusives and all those things, kind of wanted to break them down into a couple categories here. So, all right, if we break down our signings, you really have kind of four types, or at least that's how we look at it, as four types going on there. You have first off, your really big, highly coveted things, which are your CCI administered lottery system signings, so your WBs, or maybe your Marvel type signs, that they're going to facilitate that, and that'll all be through the portal, and as we're filming this, we don't have any idea of what that's all going to be. Then you have your ticketed at the booth, or for wristbands or things like that. So something like Dark Horse will do that, and they'll have people in the morning, in that first 15 minutes of the day, people are drawing a ball out of a bag, and if you get the black one or the white one or whatever it is, you win the signing for Nathan Fillion or Felicia Day or whatever it might be. Then you have simply your basic walk up and pay, go up to sales, and there's Eric Estrada or whatever, and pay him $40. There's Lou Ferrigno, and those also occur on the floor. I mean, some of my favorite memories of Comic-Con are finding Mark Hamill and Peter Mayhew and Kenny Baker and people like that on the floor, and being able to get them to sign something for you there. And then you also have just simply your ticketed at the booth signing. So things like Hasbro and Mattel and a few others will do that, where it's no lottery. You just have to know what the signing is that day, and you have to go by and get your ticket and then come back at a later time. So those are kind of your four types of signings there. Make sure you're clear what you're hunting there. Over at the SDCC blog, our friend SDCC Game of Thrones girl, GOT girl, she keeps up a huge list there that has all sorts of stuff related to the signings. She started that years ago, and so that's helpful, but also a lot of things change on the fly. So make sure, again, you're monitoring social media and asking on the floor. Now, when it comes to exclusives, again, some big changes there with the lottery system. So again, we have four types. We have our Comic-Con International lotteries. Last year, that was things like Funko and Hasbro, those most competitive booths. You also have ticketed at the booth. That was a new thing. Places like Hallmark, that used to be just go and get in kind of a big line in the morning and everything would be sold out by 10:30 or 11. They went to ticketed systems. Del Rey did the same thing, where they would have distribution and say, okay, here's your ticket, come back at 10:30, 11:30, maybe even past that. And then you've also got your, just simply get in line. Get in line. We're not that crazy in terms of our exclusives. Something like the preview booth or something like that, they usually aren't that busy, where you can kind of just get in line there. You don't have to come back later. And then lastly, you've got your pre-sales, and more have gone to systems where they have pre-sales. Entertainment Earth has that. Gentle Giant has had that. Maddie just did theirs at Mattel. NECA, so keep an eye on those. Alex Ross, Bill Sienkiewicz, a lot of people are getting on that, and that's kind of a nice thing, is you can just order your exclusives there and have them shipped at your house. We did that with a couple things last year, and it was really convenient. But do remember, again, that this is all kind of a really working new system that people are all kind of testing and trying, and I imagine we're going to see a lot of differences this year, again, in terms of just how things work on the floor. It worked great for us last year. Although we're not a fan of lottery systems, we managed to figure a way out around, what we were doing. We won a couple lotteries, we teamed up with people, we helped other people out, etc., and we're able to get what we want. So you just have to be really dynamic if you're hunting those exclusives or swag or things like that. It did lead to things though, like Hasbro seemed to have more stock than ever, and people were just walking in there on Saturday and Sunday and picking up things. And even at points on Thursday and Friday, Lego had leftover sets that people that had a Sunday ticket were able to pick up a second item there. And then, as I said, Hallmark and Del Rey had totally different systems as well, so all of those things kind of changed. Last thing I want to point out here back at this area is up there we have the mezzanine and also the sales pavilion, the outdoor area. Both are great spots to kind of hang out. On sales, one of our favorite places to hang out and pick up food. There's some good barbecue options. I mean, again, it's convention center food, so it's not like you're going to a sit-down restaurant or anything, but pretty good food, all things considered, in that outdoor area. And it's also a lot quieter and calmer. And if you don't want to make the walk to kind of the outside areas, meaning off property there, it's a nice kind of convenient way to take a half-hour break and come back. Also on the mezzanine, we always point this out on social media, and we always get people that are like, oh, I've never seen that, is remember there is that really cool view in the snack bar area there on the mezzanine. You just go up the back escalator, up one set of floors there to the back. You'll see the floor. Great panoramic shot. I think the only shots we've ever felt are better at Comic-Con is when we've been on top of like the Entertainment Earth booth or things like that, from like the big 2 double-decker booths and things like that. But in terms of like a public viewing space that every single attendee can check out, you really can't beat that. It's awesome for video, it's awesome for photos, and honestly, it's nowhere near as busy in that mezzanine and back sales area as I would think it would be. And you've always got the awesome San Diego weather. It's really, even in the hot years, it's still pretty nice weather, all things considered, to the rest of America. So fun spots there. So highly recommend checking those out to get a little bit of a break from the action. All right, we are wrapping up for this video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. There will be tons of videos during this Comic-Con season. Last year, I believe we had about 70 videos that went up during the con and before the con, building up to the con. Lots of San Diego Comic-Con content. So if you're interested in that, there'll be tons of visuals to go along with it. Find us in social media across the board at Parks and Cons. Make sure that you are following SD_comic_con to follow along with the unofficial San Diego Comic-Con blog team. They're going to be tweeting out. That's what we use for all the line updates. I mean, we contribute to that as well, but it's so helpful to be able to know what's going on across the convention with that entire team pitching in and adding their support. And then remember, OutsideComicCon.com as well. Tons of great info there, particularly obviously in the outside area. So with that being said, we're going to wrap up here. Until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.